Let me ask you something tonight, and I want you to really sit with this question. What if the date you plan to retire, that magic number you've had in your head for years, maybe 65, maybe 67, what if that date was completely made up? Not by you, not by your financial advisor, but by a system that actually benefits from you working longer than you need to. Because here's the truth, friends, and I say this with all the care in the world. Most people are working years longer than they actually have to. And tonight, I want to show you why age 59 and a half might be the most important number you've never been told to pay attention to. I know some of you are sitting there right now, tired after a long day. Maybe your back hurts. Maybe you're thinking about your grandkids and how you keep missing the little moments because you're stuck in that office 5 days a week. And you've told yourself, just a few more years. But what if a few more years wasn't the truth? What if you already have enough and you just don't know how to turn the faucet on? Stick with me to the end of this video because once you understand what I'm about to share with you, you will never look at your retirement the same way again. Let's start with the single most important financial birthday you will ever have in your life. Age 59 and a half. Not 65, not 67. Not whatever the Social Security Administration printed on your annual statement. Age 59 and a half is the day the federal government says, okay, you've played by the rules long enough. Now you can start accessing your own money without a penalty. Because here's something that shocks a lot of people when I explain it. If you have money sitting in a 401k, a traditional IRA, a 403b, or most other qualified retirement accounts, and you try to pull that money out before you turn 59 and a half, the IRS hits you with a 10% early withdrawal penalty, on top of the regular income taxes you already owe. So if you pull out $50,000 at age 57, you might lose $5,000 right off the top just in penalties, plus another chunk in taxes. That's your money. Money you worked decades to save, and the government is charging you a fee just to access it early. But the moment you turn 59 and a half, that penalty disappears. Gone. Like it never existed. The IRS doesn't send you a card. Nobody throws you a party. Most people don't even know it happened. But that single birthday quietly unlocks every dollar sitting in every retirement account you own. And that changes everything about when you actually need to keep working. Now, I want you to think about income in a whole new way. Forget about your paycheck for a minute. Instead, I want you to picture three faucets, three separate sources of water flowing into your sink. The first faucet is your work income. That's the one you've been relying on your whole career. It flows as long as you show up, and the moment you stop showing up, it stops flowing. Simple. The second faucet is your retirement account income, your 401k, your IRA, your pension if you're lucky enough to have one. Before age 59 and a half, this faucet is mostly locked. Yes, there are a few exceptions, something called Rule 72T for substantially equal periodic payments, or the Rule of 55 if you left your employer in the year you turned 55. But for most people, this faucet has a padlock on it until 59 and a half. The third faucet is your guaranteed lifetime income, Social Security, annuities, maybe a pension. This one typically doesn't turn on until your 60s or 70s, but it flows for as long as you live. Here's the insight that most people never discover. At age 59 and a half, your second faucet opens up. And if your second and third faucets together, your retirement savings plus any other income sources can cover your monthly expenses, then you don't need the first faucet anymore. You don't need to keep working just to keep the water flowing. The question isn't, how old do I have to be to retire? The question is, do I have enough faucets turned on to replace my paycheck? And for a surprising number of Americans in their late 50s and early 60s, the answer is yes. They just haven't done the math yet. Now here's something that the financial world doesn't talk about nearly enough. And this is where things get really interesting. So grab a pen if you have one nearby. Between the ages of 59 and a half and 73, you are sitting in what I call the golden tax planning window. This is one of the most valuable periods in your entire financial life. Here's why. Once you turn 73 or 75, depending on your birth year, thanks to recent law changes, the IRS is going to force you to start taking money out of your retirement accounts, whether you want to or not. These are called required minimum distributions, or RMDs. The government has been waiting patiently while that money grew tax deferred, and now they want their cut. And depending on how large your accounts have grown, those RMDs can push you into a higher tax bracket, increase your Medicare premiums, and even cause more of your Social Security to become taxable. It can create a real tax avalanche if you're not careful. But in that window between 59 and a half and 73, you have control. If you retire at 60 or 62, before Social Security kicks in and before RMDs begin, your taxable income might be very low, maybe near zero. And that means you can start moving money from your traditional tax-deferred accounts over to a Roth IRA at a very low tax rate. This strategy is called a Roth conversion ladder, and it is one of the most powerful tools available to early retirees. Imagine converting $30,000 or $40,000 a year from your traditional IRA to a Roth IRA while you're in the 12% tax bracket. You pay a little tax now, but that money grows tax-free forever, and you never have to take RMDs from a Roth in your lifetime. Done thoughtfully over 10 or 12 years, this strategy can save some families hundreds of thousands of dollars in lifetime taxes. But you only get this window if you stop working at the right time and plan ahead. Let's talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough, and it's a little uncomfortable, but I care too much about you not to say it. There are hidden costs to working too long, and they go beyond just taxes. Let's start with the financial cost. Many people in their late 50s and early 60s are in their peak earning years, which also means they're in their peak tax years. Every dollar of work income is potentially being taxed at 22%, 24%, maybe even higher. But here's the trap. That same dollar, if you took it instead from your retirement savings in a low-income year, might only be taxed at 10% or 12%. So sometimes the act of continuing to work can actually cost you money in the form of higher lifetime taxes, especially when you factor in what it does to your Social Security taxation, your Medicare premiums, and your future RMD burden. But let me set the numbers aside for a moment and talk about something more important: your health. I've sat across the table from so many people who worked until 65 or 67 because they felt like they had to, only to retire in poor health with limited ability to enjoy the freedom they'd spent decades earning. Studies consistently show that the healthiest, most active years of retirement are the early ones, your 60s, when you still have energy, mobility, and vitality. Every year you work past the point of financial necessity is a year you don't get back. It's a year you could have been hiking, traveling, playing with grandchildren, sleeping 8 hours a night, eating lunch without rushing. The math of retirement isn't just about money. It's about time, and time is the one asset you absolutely cannot replenish. Now, I know what some of you are thinking because I hear this question more than almost any other. Uncle John, this all sounds wonderful, but what about health insurance? I can't go on Medicare until I'm 65. How do I cover myself from 59 and a half to 65? And this is a completely legitimate concern. It is the number one reason people say they can't retire early, and I want to address it head on. First, if your spouse is still working and has employer coverage, this may be a non-issue. You can often join their plan. But for those of you flying solo on this, here are your real options. The ACA Marketplace, the health insurance exchange set up under the Affordable Care Act, is more generous than most people realize, especially for early retirees. Because ACA subsidies are based on your income, not your wealth. If your taxable income in retirement is relatively low, you may qualify for substantial subsidies that make your monthly premiums very affordable. A couple with $60,000 in annual retirement income might pay as little as a few $100s a month for solid coverage. That's real. A second option is COBRA, which lets you continue your employer's coverage for up to 18 months after you leave your job. It's typically more expensive because you're now paying the full premium your employer used to help cover. But it's a bridge, and sometimes that bridge is exactly what you need. There's also health sharing ministries, short-term health plans, and if you have a high deductible plan now, your health savings account can be a powerful tool to pre-fund medical costs in early retirement. The health insurance gap is solvable. It requires planning, but it should not be the wall that keeps you working longer than you need to. Here is the belief that holds more people back from retirement than any tax rule or insurance gap ever will. The belief that they don't have enough. And I want to redefine that word tonight, because I think we've been measuring it wrong. Most people think enough means having a specific giant number in the bank, $1 million, $2 million, some round figure that feels safe. But enough is not a number, it's a rate. It's whether your income sources, your faucets, can sustainably cover your actual monthly expenses. That's it. Financial planners often use something called the 4% rule as a starting guideline. It suggests that if you withdraw 4% of your portfolio annually, your money has a high probability of lasting 30 years or more. So if you have $800,000 saved, that's about $32,000 a year from your portfolio alone. Add Social Security at 62, even at a reduced rate, maybe $1,400 or $1,600 a month, and suddenly you have $48,000 to $50,000 a year to live on. For a couple who has paid off their home and lives modestly, that can be more than enough. The question you need to ask isn't, do I have $1 million? The question is, what do I actually spend every month? And can my faucets cover that without me working? When you sit down and write out your real monthly expenses, and be honest, don't forget the fun stuff, the travel, the gifts, the dinners out, you may find that your number is a lot smaller than you thought. So let me give you a practical framework right now. Here's how to actually decide whether you can stop working at 59 and a half or close to it. Step 1. Write down your monthly expenses. Everything. Housing, food, utilities, transportation, healthcare, entertainment, travel, all of it. Be real. Step 2. List every income source you'll have in retirement. Social Security at various claiming ages, any pension, required minimum distributions you'll eventually take, and the sustainable withdrawal from your savings using the 4% rule as a starting estimate. Step 3. Address the health insurance question directly. Get quotes on the ACA marketplace today, even if you're not retiring yet. Know what it costs. Step 4. Look at your tax picture. Sit down with a CPA or a fee-only financial advisor and map out your income by year from age 59 and a half to 75. Identify your Roth conversion opportunities. Understand when to claim Social Security for maximum lifetime income. Step 5, and this is the one people skip. Talk to the people who matter. Your spouse, your family. Make sure retirement is something you're walking toward, not just away from. Have a vision for what your days will look like. People who retire with purpose thrive. People who retire from misery without a plan often struggle. Let me tell you about a couple I'll call Robert and Carol, both 61 years old, living in the Midwest, each working full-time. Robert was a project manager earning $85,000 a year. Carol was a nurse making $72,000. Together, they'd saved just over $900,000 across their 401s and IRAs. They came to me convinced they had to work until 65. They hadn't done the math. When we sat down together, here's what we found. Their actual monthly expenses in retirement, with no mortgage because they'd paid it off, were about $5,200 a month, or roughly $62,000 a year. Using the 4% rule, their $900,000 could generate about $36,000 annually. Social Security for Carol at 62 would add another $14,400 per year. Robert planned to delay his until 67 for a higher benefit. That gap of about $11,000 a year, We covered it with a modest part-time consulting arrangement Robert had been offered, just 10 hours a week, something he actually enjoyed. On top of that, their ACA marketplace premiums came out to about $480 a month with subsidies. Very manageable. Carol retired at 61. Robert scaled back to part-time at 62. 2 years later, Carol told me she had more energy than she'd had in a decade. They'd taken 3 trips. Robert had learned woodworking, and they were present for their grandchildren in a way they'd never managed before. They had not waited until 65, and they had not run out of money. They simply learned how to turn on the right faucets at the right time. Friends, I want to leave you tonight with a question. Not a financial question, but a real human question. If you discovered, truly discovered with confidence, that you had enough money to stop working right now or very soon, what would you do with that time? Where would you go? Who would you spend it with? What would you finally get around to doing? Because I believe most of you watching this video are closer to that moment than you've ever allowed yourself to believe. The rules exist. The strategies are real. The math is workable. What's missing for most people is simply the knowledge that the door is already unlocked at 59 and a half, and the courage to walk through it. Once you understand this, you cannot unknow it. And once you start planning around it, your entire timeline shifts. You stop counting the years until some arbitrary retirement age and start building a real roadmap based on your real numbers. That is the difference between people who retire with joy and people who retire too late with regret. If this video opened your eyes tonight, do me one favor. Hit that like button, because it tells me you want more of this kind of content, and it helps other people just like you find this information. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming, because we're going to keep going deep on the strategies that actually move the needle for people in their 50s and 60s. And leave me a comment below. Tell me your age, tell me where you are in your retirement journey, and ask me your biggest question. I read every single one, and I answer as many as I can, because that's why we're here. Not to sell you anything, not to make this complicated, just to make sure you know what you've earned and how to claim it. You've worked hard enough, friends. Let's make sure the rest of your life reflects that.